crisis has passed. Juan is gone. The fake blood on the sheets has been stripped away, leaving the room cold and sterile once again. The bedroom door is locked, but this time, the atmosphere inside is not one of terror, but of a heavy, exhausting relief. James sits on the edge of the bed, trying to re-bandage his hand. His fingers are clumsy, shaking from the adrenaline crash. The cut across his palm is deep and ugly. Diep stands by the wall watching him. She sees the man who hunted her down. She sees the man who called her a servant. But mostly she sees the man who just mutilated himself to save their child. She walks over. She doesn't ask for permission. She kneels between his legs. "Let me," she whispers. James pulls his hand back slightly. "I'm fine. Go back to your rug. Juan might verify the cameras." "The cameras are on a loop," Diep says softly, taking his hand firmly. "I saw you hacking the tablet while the doctor was packing up. You looped the footage of me sleeping on the floor from last night." James lets out a breath, a tired smile touching his lips. "You are too observant, Diep." She gently unwraps the bloody towel. She cleans the wound with antiseptic. James hisses in pain but doesn't pull away. To her, that jagged cut looks like a badge of honor. "Why?" she asks, wrapping fresh gauze around his hand. "Why go this far? You could have just sent me away." "Juan would have found you," James says, watching her. "This is the only place I can protect you, even if it means I have to be your jailer." Diep finishes the knot. She brings his bandaged hand to her lips and kisses it softly. James freezes. That simple touch breaks down the last wall between them. "I don't want a jailer," Diep whispers against his skin. "I want my husband." James uses his good hand to cup her face. He pulls her up from the floor, dragging her onto the bed. He hugs her, burying his face in her neck. For the first time in 5 years, they are not enemies. They are survivors clinging to each other in the dark. "Are you hungry?" James asks after a moment. "That protein bar wasn't enough." Diep nods. "Starving? But the kitchen is closed. Guards are everywhere." James's eyes light up with a boyish mischief. "Who said we are going to the kitchen?" He stands up and walks to the walk-in closet. He pushes aside a rack of expensive suits to reveal a small, hidden panel in the wooden wall. "A secret passage?" Diep asks, amazed. "Built it when I was a teenager," James grins. "To sneak out. Juan doesn't know. It leads to the roof." He grabs a blanket and water. "Come on, let's get out of this cage." They squeeze through the dusty, narrow passage. James holds Diep's hand tightly. The thrill of sneaking around, of outsmarting Juan, makes Diep's heart race with excitement, not fear. They climb a ladder and push open a trap door, emerging into the cool night air. They are in the old greenhouse, a glass dome filled with white orchids. Moonlight floods in, turning the glass walls into silver mirrors. Below, the city lights twinkle like diamonds. "It's beautiful," Diep breathes. "The only place here that feels free," James says. He spreads the blanket on the floor. He pulls out a stash of food he had hidden: fruit, bread, and chocolate. "Dinner is served," James bows playfully. Diep laughs, a real, genuine sound. She sits and eats. James watches her, feeding his soul with her smile. After eating, they lie on the blanket, looking up at the stars. James rests his hand gently on Diep's stomach. "Is the baby okay?" he asks, voice trembling. "After the stress?" Diep smiles. "I feel it's a girl. She is strong, like her father." Tears fill James's eyes. "I'm not strong. I'm a coward. I let Juan control us. I hurt you." "You are fighting him now." Diep covers his hand. "You saved us tonight." James sits up abruptly. He pulls a small, worn velvet box from his pocket. The fabric is faded. Diep sits up. "James? I bought this 5 years ago," he whispers, opening it. Inside sits a simple, elegant diamond ring, delicate and pure. "I was going to give it to you the night you were arrested," James says, voice cracking. I carried it every day, even when I hated you. I couldn't throw it away. He takes the ring out with his trembling, bandaged hand. Diep, he looks into her eyes. We never had a wedding. No vows, just lies and pain. He takes her left hand. I can't promise freedom yet. I can't promise safety. But I promise this. In this cage, or in hell, I am yours. My blood is yours. My life is yours. He slides the ring onto her finger. It fits perfectly. Will you marry me again? For real this time? Diep looks at the sparkling diamond, then at the wounded hand holding hers. The pain of 5 years melts away, replaced by hope. Yes, she whispers, tears spilling. Yes, James. He kisses her, not desperate, but slow and healing. A seal on a promise stronger than Hoan, stronger than fate. They stay until dawn threatens the sky. They sneak back through the closet. James checks the tablet. The loop is still playing. The guards suspect nothing. Diep takes off the ring. She cannot wear it in front of Hoan. I'll hide it, she kisses the diamond. Keep it safe. It will be waiting for the day we walk out the front door, James promises, pocketing it. They step back into the bedroom. The rug on the floor looks cold. James goes to the bed and pulls back the covers. No more floor. James, the cameras. Hoan sees the loop, James says firmly. To him, you are on the rug. But to me, you are my wife. He pats the space beside him. Diep climbs into the soft, king-size bed. James lies beside her, pulling her into his arms. His hand rests protectively over her stomach. His chin rests on her shoulder. Good night, my wife, he whispers. Good night, my husband, Diep replies. For the first time in forever, in the heart of the enemy's lair, Diep falls into a deep, dreamless sleep. She is safe, she is loved, and tomorrow they fight together. James wakes up to the red blinking light of the smoke detector, a hidden camera. Panic floods his veins. He checks his watch. 5:55 a.m. The servants enter at 6 to 9. Diep, James shakes her shoulder hard. Wake up! Get on the floor, now! Diep snaps awake, the peaceful dream vanishing instantly. She scrambles out of the soft king-size bed, grabbing her pillow. Smooth the sheets, James hisses, jumping up to fix his side. Make it look like you were never here. Diep drops to the Persian rug at the foot of the bed, curling up into a miserable ball. James frantically smooths the wrinkles on Diep's side of the mattress, fluffing the pillow to hide the indentation of her head. He barely finishes when the heavy lock on the door clicks. James dives back into bed, pulling the duvet to his chest, feigning sleep. The door opens. It isn't a servant, it is Mr. Hoan. He walks in, dressed in a sharp gray suit, tapping a silver cane on the floor. The sound echoes like a gunshot. Rise and shine, Hoan says cheerfully. James sits up, rubbing his eyes. Father, it's 6 a.m. The early bird catches the worm. Hoan walks in, eyes scanning the room. He looks at Diep, who pretends to wake up on the rug, shivering, and catches the liars. James stiffens. What do you mean? Hoan stops at the foot of the bed. She looks well rested for someone sleeping on a hard floor. Her skin is glowing. She's young, James shrugs, keeping his voice bored. Resilient. Hoan hums. He reaches out and touches the sheet on the empty side, where Diep was sleeping 2 minutes ago. James holds his breath. Warm, Hoan murmurs. Very warm. He looks at James. Did you have a guest, or do you just toss and turn across the whole bed? Fever, James lies, lifting his bandaged hand. The wound throbbed all night. Hoan stares at him. Then he looks down at the floor. He frowns. He points his cane at the beige carpet near the closet. What is that? James looks. There on the pristine carpet is a small, dark smudge. Mud. Fresh, dark earth from the greenhouse. James freezes. They tracked it in last night. Hoan scrapes it with his cane. Mud. Inside the penthouse. You haven't left. She hasn't left. How is this here? Hoan turns to Diep. Stand up. Diep scrambles to her feet. Show me your feet. Diep's heart hammers. She wiped them last night, but maybe she missed a spot. She lifts one foot. It is clean. Hoan inspects it, unsatisfied. He looks around, hunting for a lie. His eyes land on the closet door. Open it, Hoan commands James. Why? Because the mud trail leads to the closet. Open it. James walks to the closet. He prays the secret panel is closed tight. He opens the door. Rows of suits. Nothing suspicious. Hoan pushes past him. He enters the closet, sniffing the air. Fresh air, he mutters. It smells like night air and orchids. He turns to James, eyes narrowing. He suspects the passage. If he finds the panel, he finds the hideout. He finds the food wrappers. James needs a diversion, a sacrifice. She tried to steal, James shouts suddenly. Hoan turns. What? James points at Diep, face twisting into fake rage. That's why there is mud. She tried to climb out the window last night. She tried to steal my watch and climb down the drain pipe. Diep looks at James, shocked. Then she catches his desperate eye. Play along. I caught her, James continues. I dragged her back in. We fought. That's why the bed is messy. Hoan looks at Diep. Is this true? Diep falls to her knees. I just wanted to go home, she sobs. I didn't steal anything. I just wanted to leave. Hoan looks at the window, then the closet. The lie is thin, but it explains the mud. You tried to run. Hoan walks to Diep, lifting her chin with his cane until she winces. After I warned you about your daughter? Please, Diep cries. Don't hurt her. Hoan smiles cruelly. I believe you, but belief is not insurance. He tosses a key to James. Tether her. James catches it. What? Bottom drawer. Hoan gestures. A precaution. Use it. James opens the drawer. His blood runs cold. Inside is a thin steel chain with a leather ankle cuff. Father, James says, the guards are outside. The mud is inside, Hoan snaps. Put it on her. Now. James stands frozen. If he refuses, Hoan digs deeper. He finds the baby. Diep nods imperceptibly. Do it. James walks over. He kneels. The memory of her body in his arms hours ago haunts him. Now he must chain her like an animal. Give me your leg, James whispers, voice thick with self-hatred. Diep extends her ankle. James wraps the cuff around it. Click. He locks it. He attaches the chain to the heavy bed leg. 3 meters of movement. Enough for the bathroom, but not the door. Not the closet. Tight enough? Hoan asks. James pulls it. Tight. Good, Hoan taps his cane. Now she won't climb any pipes. And James? The closet stays locked. You keep the key. If I find mud again, I won't chain her ankle. I'll break it. Hoan leaves. James collapses onto the bed, bearing his face in his hands. A silent, agonizing scream shakes his shoulders. Diep sits on the rug, touching the cold chain. She is a prisoner again. She crawls to the limit of the chain and touches James's knee. It's okay, she whispers. It's just a chain. We're alive. James looks at her, eyes red. I promised you freedom, and I just chained you to my bed. You promised to protect us. Diep pulls the chain. It rattles. This keeps Hoan away. This keeps the secret safe. She forces a smile through tears. Besides, now I really can't leave you.
Sau màn giả sảy thai, James và Diep có khoảnh khắc yên bình hiếm hoi. Trong căn phòng khóa kín, James quỳ xuống, lấy chiếc nhẫn anh giấu suốt nhiều năm để cầu hôn Diep lần nữa. Không còn hận thù hay hiểu lầm, chỉ còn hai con người sống sót sau địa ngục, chọn ở bên nhau để bảo vệ đứa con trong bụng. Nhưng bình yên rất ngắn. Tơ Hoàng bất ngờ xuất hiện lúc rạng sáng, nghi ngờ giấu buồn và mùi không khí đêm trong phòng. Để che giấu lối đi bí mật và giữ bí mật mang thai, James buộc phải tự biến mình thành kẻ tàn nhẫn trước mặt cha. Vua cho Diệp âm mưu bỏ trốn. Kết quả, Hoang ra lệnh xích chân Diệp vào giường như một tù nhân. Dù bị làm nhục và giam cầm, Diệp chấp nhận vì sợi xích ấy chính là cái giá để hai đứa còn sống.